Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 75 of the Nurtured by Nature podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined in conversation by Sam, co-founder of Wrigglebrew. Sometimes we get lucky enough to find someone who had the courage to ask the questions that didn't have answers, and then go out there and find the innovative solutions that have the capacity to reshape society and offer us hope for the future. Sam and his business partner Gabe are two such people. Having witnessed firsthand the devastating ecological impacts of excessive artificial fertiliser runoff on the aquatic environment, together they started Wrigglebrew, a deeply ethical and fully independent regenerative agricultural company that has started a revolution capable of completely rewriting how large-scale agricultural fertilisers are produced, and in so doing reversing many of the negative environmental impacts that these inputs have on the wider environment. After years of careful experimentation inspired by the last works of Charles Darwin, they have harnessed the power of earthworms to create a product that is not only organic and environmentally friendly, but significantly is also cheaper than artificial fertilisers, offering struggling farmers an economic lifeline, where they don't have to choose between doing what's right for the future at the expense of their family. Whilst initially designed for large-scale application to be utilised for agriculture and landscape-level land management, you can of course also use it in your garden. Sam and Gabe and their team are incredible. They are passionate and dedicated to having a positive, long-lasting impact that will benefit all of us. They have started with creating a truly viable and organic alternative to industrial artificial fertilisers, but that's just the beginning. They also have developed an innovative solution to plastic pollution, utilising earthworms once more. Whilst we certainly all can't be innovators like Sam and Gabe, we can be supporters, and I would ask you to join me in supporting them. Please help raise awareness by sharing this episode with others to reach farmers and gardeners far and wide. They already have thousands of acres being successfully farmed using their product, but with your help we can get this amazing solution into the hands of even more people and help them have an even bigger impact. Welcome, Sam, and thank you so much for joining us today on this episode of the Nurtured by Nature podcast. I am really looking forward to talking to you about your company, which is Wrigglebrew, and you've got some really fascinating products that you've already created that are already in production, already making a difference in the world, but you've also got some other amazing ideas that are just starting to come to fruition. So we're going to have a fantastic chat today, but just to get started, I always just ask my guests to share a little bit about their nature story. So really that's just what nature's been to you in your life, any fond memories of time in nature, or just how your relationship with nature has evolved. Anything you'd like to share to get us started would be lovely.
For sure. Well, thank you again for having me on, first of all, because I love talking about nature. It's important to have a natural world that works so we don't all die from starvation. And my nature background comes from Boy Scouts. So,
Oh, nice.
Boy Scouts of America was huge for me. And I was in it from kindergarten all the way until I graduated high school and started to go into college, to university. And I I spent several hundred nights camping in the end. And I, to this day, have never slept as well as I did in my tent. I never ate as well as I did when I was out in the field. And I never felt as well as I did out there.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of other stuff like going fishing with my grandpa and other things when I was a kid. And all of that felt good to be back out there. But when I was in Boy Scouts, I mean, there's something about spending a whole day outside and then laying down in a tent as the sun goes down, going to sleep with the sun
Yeah.
and waking up with it, that I don't know, it feels very easy in
Yeah.
a good way.
Yeah, I love that. It's something, I don't know, you feel more in tune with the world around you, don't you? And more connected, and there's numerous benefits that I've discussed in previous episode, the health benefits of laying on the ground and being surrounded by green. But you mentioned there about fishing, and I think that's the sort of link of how you kind of started on the current journey that you came on with Wrigglebrew, isn't it? Is around fishing and an event that happened whilst you were at your favorite fishing spot, basically.
Yes. Well, it was sort of my favorite. I mean, it was more so of like a place like I went there a lot with my grandpa. There was this spot, this fishing spot that we had been going to for years. And for context, my family has lived in this region for like 6 or 7 generations, so a very
Oh,
long time. And while we've been living there, the the ponds, the lakes have always been available, and we'd fished a lot. Fishing is just something that, like, my great grandmother used to fish in the Tampa Bay for her lunch like every day.
oh,
And so my grandpa and I would go to this one spot. And one day, it was my first year at university. I went out with him to go fishing, and all the fish at our spot were dead. They had all been killed because of fertilizer runoff.
yeah.
So a new housing development was going up nearby. They were building a new neighborhood. And as they were finishing that neighborhood, they put down a huge amount of nitrogen-based fertilizers
Okay.
into the soil to
Okay.
try and get all the grass,
Yeah.
like the grass behind me, to bloom. And I'm sure that it worked because there was so much excess nitrogen that it ended up pouring downstream into our lake and killing everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a real issue, isn't it, with synthetic or artificial fertilizers, is this effect it has on our water system and our water courses, and these algal blooms are becoming more and more common both in inland water, like you were saying, rivers, lakes, and also unfortunately in marine environments as well, coastal water. I think the area around you is actually quite renowned, isn't it, for the sort of, is it red tides? With that, is that sort of,
Yes,
yeah, the same impact, and you have like awful scenes that I've seen of like all the fish dying and washing up, and it's a very toxic environment, and then has massive impacts for human health as well as obviously
indeed.
the severe impact on the environment. And it it is a question that, like, it's becoming more and more of a problem. I think we're obviously becoming more reliant on artificial fertilizers. Their application has been increasing over the decades, and it takes a while for these things to sort of build up in the water system, and we're seeing more and more now of the challenges that are the impact of our sort of overuse and reliance on this single source of fertilizer. And but that led you to sort of question, didn't it? Like, there must be another way that that we can do this. What could we do?
Precisely. Because it's not as if plants in nature are reliant on 70 pounds an acre of nitrogen being dumped on them every year. But we do that. And it has this steroidal sort of effect, and it causes growth to be extremely evident and to be very large. You get huge green blooms, corn gets massive,
Yeah,
grass gets really green and large, and it does look great. And then the consequence long term is that when you overuse these synthetics, they end up destroying the soil microbiome. So, when you use 500% more nitrogen than the soil is normally exposed to, because it is going to make your plants really big and green, it ends up killing all the soil fungi and all the soil bacteria and all the organisms that live in that soil. And over time, like you said, it gradually makes the soil essentially more porous and more capable of runoff.
yeah,
This thing where fertilizer and nutrients just move straight through the soil, like sand through a sieve.
yeah. It
And
becomes a double-edged
eventually,
sword, doesn't it?
yeah, it
Basically, it's
is.
like yeah,
It's it's
yeah,
a negative feedback loop, right? Because the
yeah,
more fertilizer you're using, the worse the soil is getting, and the more easily you're wasting the fertilizer.
yeah,
And over a long enough time span, so here in Florida, we live on a peninsula. Over a long enough time span, that soil destruction can lead to vast amounts of fertilizer running off through the soil into eventually the ocean. And here in Florida, our peninsula on all sides, we get this phenomenon where we have red tide. We have so much fertilizer run off that it causes blooms of red algae, and that is often visible from space,
Yeah.
which is not a great thing to be able to claim, but you can see it from space, and then it leads to these fish kills. So yes, I was really kind of horrified by all this when I learned about it, and my question is, there's got to be a better way to do it because just dumping urea on the ground is neither very chemically sophisticated nor is it natural. And so the answer we ended up stumbling on was earthworms.
Yeah.
Um, Earthworms turns out are one of the a much better way to make fertilizer fit for a farm.
Yeah, I think it's amazing, isn't it, that we have these problems and yet we have these solutions that are kind of really simple. And like when you say it, it's like, oh, earthworms, because like anyone who's been a gardener or done a bit of home composting, you want earthworms in your home compost bin because they're gonna what's gonna help turn everything you put in the compost bin into the lovely soil that you can then take out and put around your garden. And it's it kind of it sometimes leaves me speechless that it's like we kind of got to this point, here we are 2025 and we've got all of this technology and all of this supposed intelligence, and yet we don't use these really simple solutions like sitting there like confronting us. But I mean, there are, I guess, well, one thing I want to just go back to is like you said right at the beginning, which I think is important, that obviously um farmers in particular get a lot of the negative press around like the application of fertilizers, but actually the example that you used at the beginning was basically in a more domestic setting in terms of like managing lawns and home gardens and things. And it is, whilst farmers do it on a huge scale, actually the culmination of people doing it at home or in domestic gardens is huge as well. And so it's what you produced is both for both sources, isn't it? It can benefit be used in both applications. It's not just for home or for farmers.
That's correct. And to be clear, while the farmers are the majority of the source of the nitrogen runoff, I often blame them less because they're kind of more in a bind.
Yeah.
So here in Florida, we have a lot of housing developments we build, and that is the case throughout a lot of the country. But the most grown crop in the United States, I don't know what it is in the UK, but in the United States, the most grown crop is grass.
Yeah, the lawn, the home,
It's
the
the
home
lawn.
lawn.
For whether it's for golf courses, which I makes me extremely sad, or it's for just to have in front of your house
Yeah,
or behind your house or both, which I always found confusing. That's our most grown crop. We
yeah,
spend enormous amounts of money, water, fertilizer, time, pesticides, gasoline, all of this to grow and then cut the same crop over and over again, which we do
yeah,
nothing with.
yeah, yeah,
And it's extraordinarily it's maddening. It really is
yeah,
maddening, but that is a huge part of fertilizer runoff. And the farmers, again, I don't blame them as much because for them, what they are growing, their family is often on the line for that. Farmers have very, very thin margins, razor
yeah,
thin margins as a business. They often are growing crops because that's the only thing that they have done for generations. So
yeah,
it's not as if they could just quit farming and go do something else. You know, that land has been in their family for years, etc. There are all these reasons why farmers are trying to be as efficient as possible, and they're working with very poor economic conditions. So I understand that it's really hard for them to make a switch. But housing development companies, their margins are awesome. They have 70% margins, 80% margins
yeah,
most of the time. They don't really have an excuse. And so that's why there's a lot of legislation being passed to try and limit their use of fertilizers. But a lot of it's very limp handed. You know, it's
yeah, yeah.
you
Not
can't
being
use fertilizer
enforced.
in
Yeah,
these months, but then it's not enforced or
yeah.
exactly. So,
Yeah,
but
I think it's
earthworms.
important as well, and I really like that you've raised that because I mean, farmers are producing food. We all need food to survive. So, there is that as well. And like you say, whereas a lawn actually has very little ecological value. I've got quite a lot of episodes with various people talking about trying to persuade people to grow less lawn and replace it with
Please.
alternatives. But it it is farming is a hard industry, and I think these people have often been ingrained in it for generations. They're often also, they work very long hours. They don't have a huge amount of time to do the research. And then they're often guided, unfortunately, by like these big agrochemical companies who have a lot of money to spare to send out representatives and
Yes.
who are essentially salespeople. They have a vested interest in you buying their product and, making it as seamless and easy as possible for the farmers to take that product. And there's also then comes with that. I mean, you guys who are offering these alternatives, I mean, I really commend you because you're up against a behemoth of an
Yeah.
industry that has a lot of money to like create propaganda really to
Yeah.
basically say that it's their product is the only way to kind of feed the world. And I mean, I'm a big supporter of organic farming over here, and they have a lot of challenges getting people to support them because there is so much propaganda out there that is basically like without artificial fertilizers, it's impossible to produce the amount of food that we need to
Yeah.
feed the growing human population. Um,
And it's not true. It really isn't true. And then there's a lot that could be said on that topic. But the bottom line is, yeah, there's a lot of propaganda, and there's a lot of it's a similar marketing effort that has been undertaken with the fossil fuel industry and other industries
yeah,
for years. And they do this. This is really prominent in America. It's kind of like they did this with cigarettes. It's the tactic of, well, maybe it's not as these people are saying bad things about it, but it's really not all that bad.
yeah.
Okay, well, maybe it is that bad, but like, we need the jobs, or maybe it's pretty bad for the environment, but we there's no other way to really do it. So we just have to, which
We
regrettably we
have
have
to
to
eat.
keep
It's
doing
a
it.
necessary evil, isn't it? It's that. So yeah,
But it's not as if we did agriculture for 12,000 years or whatever prior to this without using these compounds. And the argument against that is, well, the Green Revolution, all the rural countries,
yeah.
they couldn't feed themselves. We couldn't produce the yields before all of this. That's not really true either. I mean, there's certainly a lot to be said about the Green Revolution, but the bottom line is we started to learn a lot about how to actually make organic farming work in the 1800s and the early 1900s. For example, Charles Darwin, his last work was on earthworms. His swan song was on earthworms converting vegetable mold, which is, like food waste and
Yeah.
compost, into to soil, to humic
Oh,
acid
I
and,
didn't
and
know that.
humus.
That's fascinating. Wow.
That was his last book. I'm actually wearing a shirt that's a Darwin reference right now, but he he discovered that earthworms had a massive positive impact on agriculture, and he was laughed at by the agricultural community for 10 years
Wow. Yeah.
until other scientists, trying to discredit him, testing earthworms in potted plants, found that, oh wow, these earthworms are actually massively improving the yields of every plant we try and grow them with. He was dead by the time he was essentially vindicated on the topic, but
Yeah.
what's terribly ironic about all of this is when we discovered from a professional agricultural world in the late 1890s and early 1900s that earthworms are amazing for agriculture. We just started to understand that those guys can be used to grow crops. That's almost the exact same time we figured out how to make artificial nitrogen.
Yeah. And the
So,
and the money kind of led us down the path that we've come to now, I guess.
yeah, because artificial nitrogen is way more profitable. It is way more it's infinitely more profitable to make urea and ammonia and hydrous fertilizers than it is to make a compost.
Yeah.
Compost has way longer turnaround times. You can't pump it out of the ground. You and more than that, you can't convert your factory back and forth from making explosives to fertilizer with compost.
Yeah, it's I think I mean a lot of people might not be aware of that. I mean it's something I'm aware of, but a lot of people might not realize actually that synthetic and artificial fertilizers are like massively linked to fossil fuels as well, and particularly the nitrogen is manufactured from fossil fuels, and also, I mean, because I guess it's the artificial fertilizers really focus on three macronutrients, don't they? Nitrogen,
Yes,
phosphorus, and potassium, isn't it?
that's correct.
And they're basically non-renewable as well. That's the other thing that we've got is we've got these three sources that we're massively heavily reliant on. I think I saw a amazing statistic that said in 2015, 50% of the global population was fed with crops that were grown with artificial fertilizers. And I should think it's probably only increased since then.
Almost
Um,
certainly.
and again, it's tied, this climate kind of, it's all, well, as nature is, everything is interlinked as well. So you've got the runoff, the effect on water quality, human health, the effect on soil health, but then you've got also this, reliance on non-renewable resources, the fossil fuels, but also the mineral ores that have been
Yes.
mined to create them. And really it is important that we actually start taking it seriously to find alternatives to this that are viable on like large scale that can be used and scaled to sort of agricultural level.
We have a massive environmental economic crab in a bucket mentality going on right
Yeah.
now. We have, as you say, it is a non-renewable resource. NPK comes from nitrogen. That comes from a waste product of natural gas refining. Phosphorus, we mine that out of the ground. And it primarily comes, we mine that here in Florida, but we also mine that in the Western Sahara. Those are basically the two big sources for it. That's
Yeah.
kind of it. Uh, and then there's potassium, which is they're produced in a number of pretty not so environmentally friendly ways.
Yeah.
And so all three of them are pretty non-renewable. There is a nitrogen cycle, so we can make more nitrogen through nitrobacter and through nitrogen fixation, but we can't make more natural gas. So all that infrastructure that we've been building up to make our nitrogen is not, it's not going to last forever. It will
Yeah.
be, and much of our natural gas comes from countries that are not always super friendly to us,
Yeah.
and are often impacted by war or economic, by tariffs, for example. We had that whole tariff scare recently. So they're
Yeah,
not
it's
great sources.
an important point we were discussing earlier, weren't we, of basically back I think it was 2022, which is actually three
Yes,
years ago now, isn't it? Which I was going to say 2 years ago, and then I
it's
realised
crazy.
time flies. And like the cost of fertilizers went through the roof because of the issues in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia and the war going on there. The cost of
Yes.
fossil fuels went very high. I know in this country, in the UK, and you were saying it was the same in America, that actually it had a massive impact on what farmers were having to pay for fertilizers, and then that impacted how they could use it. So these, I mean, I think what I'm just sort of saying here is we're kind of painting a picture of actually like, this goes far beyond like, just being something that is, for those that want to be green and sustainable. This is actually like a really fundamental like discussion about how we need to like really create an industry that's much more robust and able to survive like all of these impacts that it can have on it. From the basic, the start of the chain is the problem. And actually, so if you can find an alternative that isn't impacted in the same way, like the benefits to everything beyond just the environmental benefits are huge.
Yes, humanity benefits as much as the environment benefits. And of course, we also ourselves draw benefit from the fact that we still have an environment.
Yeah.
There are many, I think, unaccounted for economic positives to having a healthy, functioning environment around us. And and you're right. I analogize it often to the energy industry. A lot of people claim solar panels were basically never going to work. I remember that discussion happening back in like 2008, 2015.
Yeah.
Solar panels are never going to work. They're always going to be more expensive. They're never going to produce enough power. Well, China just produced their first terawatt of power with solar panels. I know in the UK there's been a lot of efforts to bring wind and solar power. I know recently you guys had like a full day or something that was entirely
Yeah,
produced.
we often at this time of year more and more frequently of having situations where we produce enough renewable energy to basically power the entire country.
Right.
I think partly because obviously this time of year we're using less energy, but also
Yeah.
obviously we have we're benefiting from a lot of sunlight this year. So
Because you guys don't have air conditioning. That's why. We have air conditioning. That eats up all of our electricity.
yeah,
But coal is now more expensive than solar panels are on a
yeah,
on a kilowatt hour basis. And so it's not even economically viable to do coal in a lot of places anymore. And that's where we need to go with fertilizer because we're still using natural gas for all of our food. We're still using it to produce all of our nitrogen. So we need to find renewable ways to make fertilizer. And there are plenty of methods. There are ways to make fertilizer from algae, there are ways to make fertilizer from via composting, anaerobic and aerobic. And I think most capaciously there is the earthworm option.
yeah,
Earthworms make pound for pound the best manure in the world, and it's barely a contest because their entire survival strategy essentially revolves around producing high quality castings so that the plants that they drop those castings near can provide more leaf litter for them and for their offspring. So earthworms are really, in my opinion, the key to making sustainable fertilizer. And they make it from food waste and from farm waste and from horse and cow manure. So it's not like we're running out of those
yeah.
sources, unlike natural gas.
I think that's what's so clever about it, isn't it? Is that you're harnessing like a natural process. Like, earthworms have evolved alongside plants, obviously not necessarily crop plants, but plants in general. And, they have a mutually beneficial relationship with them. And so they've evolved to create a product that enhances the ability of plants to grow so that they benefit from the plants growing and vice versa, and it's this lovely cycle, and therefore it kind of it's well, it's one of those things that like when you read about Sam and your partner, is it Gabe
Gabe,
who's
yeah.
yeah, and like what you've put together, it's like you kind of think like, oh, it's a no-brainer. Like, why,
I
why,
mean, it kind of
why
is.
has no one done it before? But I mean, you really like you really worked hard, actually, the two of you, to really refine the process to create a product that is usable. Because obviously, I mean, the average gardener could use earthworms and have a compost bin at home, and eventually, over time, create compost and the benefits of earthworms, but you've actually got a product that gives them all of those benefits without having to go through the months and sometimes years of the composting process to come out with the product at the other side.
Yes, and to be clear, our goal wasn't really to actually address the needs of a gardener. That kind of is incidental. Our original intent was to make an earthworm-based fertilizer liquid that large farms could
Yeah.
use. Because so that our question was, worm castings exist since Darwin. We've known that they are amazing for growing crops, and there are plenty of studies both here and internationally that demonstrate that they have effects on growing plants equivalent to those that you might see from these almost steroidal synthetic fertilizers. So
Yeah.
you can use them as an effective replacement. And our question therefore was, why is it not being used industrially? Why is it not being used on a large scale? And the answer that we discovered is that the reason it's not being used at a large scale is because the logistics do not support it.
Yeah.
Earthworm castings and the liquid, the tea that you make from that, while they can be plugged into the liquid agriculture system of most modern farms, they don't have a shelf life. They
Oh,
have
okay.
no stability. The average worm tea or the average compost tea, either of them, has a shelf life that is usually 24 to 48 hours.
Oh, wow. Okay. Very short. Yeah.
Extraordinarily short. And that means it's impossible to really sell that to anyone, to
Yeah.
manufacture it and to sell it to a farmer because here in the United States, for example, a lot of my farmers are in Missouri. Missouri is far enough from Florida that it is about a 36-hour drive to get there. So if I put it in a semi truck and he has to drive out there,
Yeah.
it will go bad literally before it even reaches the farmer, let
Yeah.
alone before the farmer has a chance to read the instructions, store it, stockpile it, depot it, use it. So there's no way that he can use a worm tea or a compost tea. So our question became not can you make fertilizer from these worm castings that farmers can use, but can you make it stable? Can you
Yeah.
make it actually, effectively usable?
Viable basically on a commercial basis is essentially, yeah.
Precisely. And that's a engineering challenge really more than it is anything. And so Gabe and I spent 3-ish years, really, 2 years and change in the lab working on that problem. And eventually we were able to figure out how to do that kind of by mimicking like the pasteurization process that
Okay.
is used for making milk last
Yeah.
longer. And we got that to work, but it was a slog. And once we had it working, we figured, oh, well, we'll just start selling this to farmers. That'll be really easy. And that's not really how that works either.
I suppose it's a challenge because you need to stabilize it without losing the integrity of it as well, isn't it? So that without losing the benefits of the worm casting in whatever process that you're using to stabilize it. And
Indeed.
obviously in terms of like sort of food and diet, that's the challenge with food as well, isn't it? How to preserve it whilst still maintaining the nutritional qualities that you want. And ultimately, I guess, we're talking about plant nutrition, which is the same in the same sort of idea as human nutrition, that you want to be able to maintain all of those fantastic benefits that you've got in this product, but it has to be
Exactly.
able to get to the end user and still have all of those benefits. I mean, so yeah, I
It's
think
like it's like you can't boil it, right? Like if you
yeah,
boil it, you're gonna destroy it. Like if you boil kombucha, for example, or yogurt, you're gonna destroy a lot of the benefit because there are active microbial cultures in there.
yeah,
There are often large organic compounds that are quite sensitive to heat. So it's a significant challenge to make a liquid, a worm tea, shelf stable, so it's not biologically active, but to still maintain biology that can then become active, and to make sure that it only has aerobic, gram positive good bacteria in it, and not some pathogens hibernating in there that you don't want. So that's a very, very difficult challenge. And it's really why I think no one went after it very much prior to us. It's also just kind of obscure. But once we got it working, and that's our great secret, our great proprietary thing is how did we get it working? So fortunately, I won't be able to
I
dive too
won't
much
ask
into
you to share it.
it. But once we got that
I'm quite
working,
happy for you to keep it and hopefully make lots of money so that you can spread this around the world and
well, I say that, but we did file a patent on it, so it will become public knowledge how we've done it relatively
yeah,
soon. But up until that point, I'm advised not to share it too much. But regardless, um, once we got that process working, we started seeing these really amazing results where we had to give a lot of free samples to farmers. That was the
yeah,
trick.
yeah.
Just give it to them and let them try it, and then allow them to come to their own conclusion. And we started getting really amazing feedback. People were telling us, "Yeah, I'm getting the same yields. I'm getting, my azaleas are growing as well as they would with synthetic compounds, but it's 20% cheaper and it's
Oh
organic, so
wow.
that's really nice."
Oh wow.
Uh,
That's
and then we even started seeing impacts on drought resistance and stress
okay.
resistance and pest population. And that was really surprising to us because it turns out that these organic compounds are not just beneficial in the sense that they provide basic nutrition, but many of them are also often full of things like plant signaling compounds and some of the
Okay.
plant growth hormones that help with germination, that help with stress resistance, with better drought resistance, with better anchoring of the roots. And so we find that this organic fertilizer is not just better for the plant because it's organic and it's therefore better for the soil, but it is literally improving the health of the plant in real
Yeah.
time and in saving the farmer money by that mechanism. And I think that's really key too, because one of the big barriers here, I think, in the US, I don't know if it's the same in the UK, but I imagine it probably is, to adopting organic fertilizers, is that many of them are more expensive
Yeah, yeah, exactly. As
than
when
the
you said it was
synthetics.
cheaper, I was like, oh wow, like this is the thing whether we like it or not, farming is a business,
It
and
is.
the bottom line counts. And if you can provide them a product that is as good, if not better, but it costs them less, then and you can get it in front of enough people, then it becomes something that's really viable as an alternative to them, and benefits them in multiple ways. They're not having to do this because they want to save the world and have that feel good factor at the expense of being able to feed their family. They're able to actually hopefully make more profit, and alleviate some of the financial burdens that they've got, and have the sort of flipping it on its head, that they get the benefits for the environment as a sort of secondary thing for them.
Yeah. And the knock-on benefits of that too, which is your soil quality improving rather than declining. So if you're regenerating and building new topsoil, next year you may actually need to use less fertilizer.
Yeah.
And while that maybe doesn't sound so attractive to me, the fertilizer company, that sounds very attractive to the farmer. And if you're in the business of making sure that farms succeed and that we have food, then maybe not having the highest profit margin physically, humanly possible isn't such a bad outcome.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that farmer, even though maybe they're going to buy less fertilizer from you next year, they're going to tell all their friends. And they're going to tell all the other farms nearby that, hey, there's this product that you can use that's cheaper and it's better for the environment and it's better for my soil. You could try this too. I had a good time with it. And so it sells itself. You don't need to spend as much money on all these salespeople because the product itself is an attractive option. And for whatever reason, that seems to be rocket science to a lot of organic fertilizer companies. Like the concept of being cheaper
Yeah.
is just unacceptable. And I don't really get it. I mean, I think it's because when you're going organic, there are farms that will pay a premium because they
Yeah.
they are like the real believers and they really care. But you're cannibalizing each other's market when you're only going after the real believers.
Yeah.
The hope for organic fertilizers ought to be that we can convince people who don't care at all to switch to them because it's just the
Cheaper.
smart decision.
Yeah. This is one of the things about, obviously, my podcast is about like our relationship to nature, and how we as a society can evolve to, you know, sort of become better stewards of our
Right.
natural world. And actually, like, the longer I've done it, the more I've realized how interlinked it is with like social justice issues and things like that. And the reality of it is, when you're trying to bring something like you are to market, like, actually, you have to convince people in a language that they understand. And the language that most people understand really is profit and loss, and, financial. And so it's incredible that you've actually managed to create a product that is better for the environment, and do it in such a way that actually it makes financial sense to people. Because I think that's where the for me, when I was looking at what you're doing, I was thinking that's where the real amazing power is in what you've created, is that you don't actually need to try and appeal to these people who are, already convinced that they want to save the environment and, work in a way that's more harmonious with nature. You've got a product that can appeal to like the whole sector, because you can say, it doesn't matter if you want to save the environment, but this product's cheaper for you. And therefore you can benefit from saving money. And oh, by the way, you're actually going to help save the environment as well. And which is,
It's like a little feather in your cap. It's an
yeah,
extra,
yeah,
yeah. But that's the way it really ought to be because ultimately, as you say, a lot of people care about the environment, but they're not going to sacrifice efficiency for the environment.
yeah,
They would rather. I mean, it's the same reason a lot of people were reticent to adopt EVs,
yeah,
range anxiety and all this other stuff. A lot of the reason EVs have taken off is because people are starting to very slowly realize there are efficiencies that are gained by them. I drive an EV and I love it because I don't have to change my oil and I don't have to change my belts and my hoses and worry about the transmission. So there are all these mechanical benefits and maintenance benefits. I maintain my brakes, far less often. I only have to use them, one third as much because I have regenerative braking. Those are natural benefits of the EV, but none of those were advertised.
Yeah.
Most people are shocked when I tell them that my maintenance costs are, 3 times lower than when I was driving a gas car. And that's because all the marketing around EVs was, oh, save the environment because of the
Yeah.
battery, or
Yeah.
oh, it's luxurious or it's cool, like Tesla did all this, look at our Cybertruck. But that's nobody wants to buy an EV because it looks like a polygon. They're gonna want to buy it because it saves them money at the end of the day. That's how you're gonna actually make change in the way people drive their cars. So it's the same with fertilizer. It's the same with any industry. It has to be a real value because as much as we often, I think, begrudge profit, like, oh, these guys are just doing this for a profit. At the end of the day, nature itself operates on the basis of the profit margin. That's how the adaptation of species works. That's how even fungal colonies in the ground, they're exchanging resources with one another in order to profit their survival. It's a function of our minds on a very basic level. So it's very difficult to ask people to be self-sacrificial, to have true empathy, to act against their own self-interest for the greater good. So if we can find a way to avoid making them do that,
Yeah.
then in some ways we ought to do that if our goal is indeed to benefit the environment overall.
Yeah, I think it's very important that like we touched on a little bit earlier that, farmers are often very financially stretched as it is. So anything we can do to make it as easy as possible. And that's what I was saying as well about the agrochemical companies. They make it easy basically for the
Yes.
farmers to just, tap into their system and go on. So and that's what you've obviously thought about quite considerably is how that you generate a product that basically a farmer can just buy and tap it into the system that they've already got without having to change massively how they're doing things. I mean, obviously NPK fertilizers have like sort of they come with like different ratios of what's
Oh yeah.
involved in it. Do you does your product have a same sort of like a consistent nutritional value? How does it work like that side of it?
We've worked really, really hard to try and keep it as consistent as possible. Organics are fundamentally less stable because it's not a set recipe the same
Yeah,
way that
yeah,
urea is. The average molecule in, urea, ammonia, nitrogen fertilizer is like 5 atoms, four
yeah,
atoms, and it's a very set thing. Humic acid is on average 185 atoms. It's a much, much larger molecule.
yeah.
And there are dozens, hundreds, possibly thousands of varieties of that one molecule. So not all humic acid is exactly the same. But we've worked very, very hard to maintain a very strict purity to what we're making and to ensure that it is the same thing every time. And that's involved developing entirely new QA processes to test organic fertilizer the way we're doing it, and getting really kind of bizarre equipment. We have a very strange looking lab compared to most chemistry, labs, but it's or most QA labs, but we've been fairly successful at it. And
Yeah.
as a consequence, we now have thousands and thousands of acres. So many dozens, probably well over 100 large industrial farms at this point using the brew very
Oh wow.
successfully and using it to grow row crops. So
Okay.
here in
Yeah.
the US, that's a lot of soy and corn and
Yeah.
sorghum and things of that nature, and effectively dialing down or eliminating their nitrogen use on a lot of these acres. And I don't know what the impact of that is on runoff because it's impossible to measure since we don't
Yeah.
really know how much is currently being used by these farmers. But it's to the tune of, I mean, last year, for example, this last year we put out 30,000 gallons of our fertilizer.
Okay.
So, that's 120,000 liters roughly of fertilizer. It's a lot.
And
And
yours is concentrated as well, isn't it? So it then
that's
gets
correct.
watered down, as it were.
A lot. It gets watered down quite a lot.
Yeah.
So, we're talking like 30 ounces to the acre. So that's roughly less than a liter to the acre. And so that's a huge amount of acreage and of
Yeah.
fertilizer and a huge amount of nitrogen and phosphorus that is being um, abrogated, that's being replaced. So that's an excellent result. We want to push that a lot farther this year because we're not even yet making like a single digit impact on America's fertilizer use. But
Yeah.
next year, maybe we'll start to break into that single digit. We're projecting to do as much as 300,000 gallons this next year, and that would be huge. Um, and so it's been really good. And the driving factor to convince farmers, like I said, is that it saves them money ultimately,
Yeah.
that it's easy.
And that
And
you've got these other farmers having results as well, which is what you said. I mean, um,
yes.
I know my local farm here. I've known the one of the guys that works there for sort of 30 odd years and know him very well. And he talked about when obviously the cost of the fertilizers went up, they went along to an agrochemical company's sort of showcase, and they were demonstrating the effectiveness of their fertilizers and things. And it was like he was like, you see this, the crops that they've got, the sample crops that they've got where they've sprayed things, and he was like, this, what they're conditioned to see as well, like this lush explosion of growth. They're like, oh my god, we can't cope without it. And yeah, so it is ultimately having it out there, farmers being able to see that they do get the yields, and the benefits maintained through the whole chain of events really for them.
Yeah. And we've had the same success with landscapers as well too. So now we have landscapers using it for housing developments and lawns and maintenance of buildings and gardeners as well, home gardeners too. Finally, we've been able to start reaching them as well. And the best salespeople, as I said, are those who have tried it. And so word of mouth is very, very powerful, and it's been very, very useful to us because we are a small startup. We,
Yeah.
as a group, were, a bunch of kids coming out of college, basically. We
Oh.
took on no venture capital, no private equity.
Oh wow. Oh,
And to this
incredible.
day, we've still had no investment. We are entirely free and clear, just bootstrapping, and that's allowed us to keep this high-minded attitude and not, go all in on trying to sell this at the highest profit margin we can and
Oh.
push it as sleazily as we can.
Oh, that's amazing. I actually just got goosebumps when you were saying that, Sam, because I think that's, massive, massive credit to you and Gabe and your team, because that's an incredible achievement to have got this far. And I mean, like you said, you spent like 2.5, 3 years like trying to sort of perfect the process to create a stable product. And to be able to do that. I don't want to. I don't want it to sound patronizing by saying at your age, because it's like,
It's
but
fair, yeah.
it is. I'm just. It's just incredible, and wow. Thank you actually to you guys for like persevering and being so committed to it. That's really, actually, it's just really inspiring to be honest, to know that there's people like you that have these incredible abilities and knowledge, and that you have persevered through quite a lot of hardships, I should imagine. Really,
Yes. Yeah.
it is. My partner, we run a business as well. It's running a business is hard enough as it is, but when you've actually got to innovate and like generate a product from scratch as well is incredible. So yeah, really hats off to you all for like, that's an incredible achievement.
Well,
And
thank you.
I hope that by putting this out there, your company is Wrigglebrew, and we will have all the details. But yeah, definitely, if people are listening to this, please go and support these guys, and go and support them on social media, share it. If you know anyone farming, agriculture, also home, everything. Because this is, it's people like you that have the capacity to really shift actually the direction of some of like the major challenges that our environment faces. And you've done it in an incredibly innovative way that actually like ticks all of these boxes, like we were saying about, the cost is actually cheaper, like, and then it becomes like, well, people can't say no to it. Like if you go, it's better for the environment and it's cheaper, like, there's got to be something wrong with you if you go, no,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go for the more expensive, like less environmentally friendly option. And but yeah, I mean, there I know we've talked a lot about fertilizer, but there is another aspect to your business which is
Yes.
equally as exciting, and I would like to obviously make sure that you have time to share about that. And because you are clearly like massive innovators, and you,
With
you
worms.
yeah.
The worms are really doing a lot of the heavy lifting, but I mean, yeah, we originally we worked in the same lab, Gabe and I did. That's why we really enjoy doing research because that's our bread and butter. That's what we got started doing. And so for context, we had won this competition at our university for funding. We actually won a small grant. I say small, I mean it was $15,000, which is awesome.
Yeah,
It was amazing at the time. It felt like we won the lottery.
sort of life changing, I guess, really. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
When we won that, it allowed us we got a van, so we were able to drive around and go to farms and stuff. And it also allowed us to get some of our own real lab equipment and allowed Gabe to pursue some of his pet projects because it was Gabe's idea originally to use earthworms as the source
yeah.
for the fertilizer because he's very clever and he had, I was asking him like, well, how do we make fertilizer in a way that doesn't, require 1% of the world's energy? And he's like, well, earthworms eat garbage. Like, show me this YouTube video. So he was the first one who was really interested in it, and he was reading an article that was from I think it was Stanford, and they had shown larval worms eating polystyrene plastic.
Okay.
This was a study done, I think, 2017 or 2018.
Yeah.
And shortly after that, several YouTubers covered it, and then there were several other papers done replicating this, where these worms were being fed plastic, and they're actually eating this plastic, and they're breaking it down in their stomach through this enzymatic process, and they're gaining weight while eating it, so it's actually good for them. I mean, good for them in the sense that they're not dying, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
They're not being sacrificed for the,
right.
yeah, yeah.
And they're not just pooping out like microplastic, but that immediately got the like wheels in our heads turning. Like, wait a minute, okay, so we're already looking at worms eating food waste to poop fertilizer. When worms eat plastic, do they also poop fertilizer? Do they poop castings that we can use? And then the next question becomes, okay, if worms are eating plastic too and potentially pooping something useful out of it, that plastic is, let's bottom line, is being eliminated chemically. Why are we not using that to eliminate all of our plastics?
Yeah.
Because we have a lot. Every time you get takeout, you get a polystyrene container, but the housing industry uses, hundreds of pounds of it every time they build a house. There's 100 billion pounds of plastic floating around out there. There's this Pacific garbage patch, like an island of plastic the size of
Yeah.
Texas floating
Yeah.
out there in the ocean. It's in all of our organs. We have a credit card's worth of plastic in our brain. So there's all of this plastic. And now there are these papers saying this organism can eat it and break it down. Why are we using that? Put the two together. It's right there. But again, it's not quite that simple, and it turns out that while yes, these worms can eat plastic, they only really do it when they're starving, and they eat it very, very slowly. And they also make a mess when they're doing it. So they're not pooping microplastics out, but they are shredding the plastic as they chew it, and so microplastics end up all over their body and their face, kind of like a toddler eating a cake.
Yeah, so it's kind of it's sort of like that, when you're really hungry and you want something really tasty and you've got like a dried bit of bread.
Yeah.
You sort of chewing like mechanically, like, oh, if there's
Yeah.
nothing else, I'll eat this. Yeah.
So they're doing this with polystyrene, but regardless of those drawbacks, it does show that there's a possibility to
Mhm.
enzymatically or bacterially, because let's face it, that's what's actually eating the plastic in the gut of the worm, delete this plastic, so to speak, to convert it into an inoffensive biodegradable material, whether that's the biomass of the worm or their or their feces. So it got Gabe's wheels turning and my wheels turning, and we're like, okay, you know what? We need to try to make this process better
Yeah.
and see if we can get our the same worms we're using to make fertilizer to get rid of plastic. Because then we might be able to kill two birds with one stone. And plenty of plastic waste is also dirty or has food on it already. So, that stuff's not being recycled as is.
Yeah.
Maybe we can really specialize in taking some of that away. We proposed a really long series of experiments with every idea we could think of on how to improve this process to the National Science Foundation. So we pitched them on all these different things we wanted to try. And they had a board of PhDs look over it and they said, well, we like some of these, we don't like these, we like some of these are really good. We will fund you $275,000
Oh, wow.
to pursue this for a year. And
Yeah.
so that is what we did from 2023 to 2024. We spent that year just going completely worm crazy, trying to get them to eat as much plastic as possible. And at the end of that process, we ended up creating bioreactors that simulated the worm's guts that were able to digest not just polystyrene plastic, but also LDPE, that's plastic bags, PET, that's like plastic water bottles, and to do that in a series of days. So digestion of like a pound of plastic in one of these bioreactors in 5 days.
Oh, wow. So you've, at this point, kind of taken the worms out of the equation directly?
Sort of. What we're doing now is like we're using the bioreactor to digest the plastic into something that's biodegradable, and then
Okay.
that biodegradable goop is then going to the worms as a food.
Ah, okay.
So
Okay.
that way they don't have to chew it up and get microplastic everywhere. It's a lot easier for them to digest. They can eat a lot more of it, like exponentially more of it. But basically we figured out that if you kind of pre-digest the plastic using the microbes from their guts, you can make it a worm food, a much better worm food, almost kind of like, how like baby birds are fed by their mothers with
Yeah,
this like
yeah. Wow.
sort of
Okay.
pre-digested stuff. Same idea. And the consequence of that is we can take pounds and pounds of dirty mixed plastic waste and turn it into worm castings, into fertilizer. And that's pretty amazing. We haven't actually used that for our fertilizer yet, but we have grown plants with it separately and isolated, and they are growing exactly the same as they do with normal worm castings. And so the upshot is rather than having this plastic sit in a landfill for 800 years and eventually end up as microplastics in our brain, we can, in a matter of weeks, turn it into soil. And then that soil can be used to grow crops.
And I mean, this is just, I th it's kind of well, it just leaves me speechless. I don't, it's one of those things that it's just like, um, wow, because obviously plastic pollution is something that has, been a rallying cry for decades, and despite suggestions to stop manufacturers, and creating the problem, like I mean, we haven't really got very far, have we? I think we've got for like, I don't know if you call it the same in your country, but like bag for life instead of a disposable plastic bag.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's about it. We've got rid of plastic straws in some instances and
And we,
stuff,
we
but
yeah, we haven't done that like there was so much pushback on that here.
yeah,
We
it's
we went back. Now
yeah,
everything's plastic
I mean,
straws.
but it's been, the steps we've made, it's just been like tiny, like they're so minuscule, you couldn't even spot them with a microscope, really, in
No.
in
And
our
and
attempt to,
meanwhile,
yeah.
on the other side of the world, like plastic production's going way, way up for all
Yeah.
these other countries. So,
Yeah, and I mean, that's just, it's incredible. Now, I mean, I suppose the one question to ask is, obviously we're familiar with the idea that plastics break down into microplastics and nanoplastics, which aren't actually visible to the naked eye. So I guess the question to ask is like, is the finished sort of product that you're getting from the worms, is that actually, free of plastic?
As far as we can tell, yes. So we've done a lot of testing on this because that is really the bottom line, right? Like if you are just making more micro nanoplastics out of it, you haven't really fixed anything. In chemistry, you never get a 100% reduction. Something always makes it through, but you can get 99.9% or 99.999%. We don't know quite where we are on that scale, whether it's 90% or 99.999% right now.
Okay.
All the indications point much more towards the 99.99% side of things. We've done HPLC testing and some other analytical stuff that has shown good results, but you always need more data.
Yeah.
Um, like a lot of people don't realize that, for example, to make any really good statistical correlations, you need at least 30 individual samples from a population. So we have to run this experiment basically like 30 times or
Yeah.
more
Yeah. Okay.
just
And
to,
obviously it's still quite early days for you guys. Like you said,
yes,
this is just over the last year that you've even managed to refine a process that allows you to get to this stage. So then
yes.
you've got to kind of work through the next stage of just seeing exactly that it's replicable and
We don't even know at this moment all of the polymers that it works on. So we've tried
yeah.
it on a few of them, but we haven't tried it on all the common plastics, and we haven't tried it on all the combinations of common plastics. So there's still a lot of early work to be done. But we know that at least for a good portion of the existing plastics, this process does work. So what we're aiming to do now is scale it and continue to run experiments for another 2 years on this. So the goal is the end of the next 24 months or so, go to actual production, so to speak. So 2 years from now, be processing plastic in bulk and turning that into worm castings in bulk. Um, to achieve that, we've asked for some more grant funding, and of course, we are also supporting that through our sales of our existing worm tea product. And that's we've been pretty successful at doing that raise. Again, we've taken no private equity and no investment from any private entity. It's all been public funding. But it's been very challenging to do that.
Yeah.
We've gotten a lot of offers and we've had to turn a lot of them down. And sometimes that hurts because, hey, we'll throw, $500,000 at you for 10% of your company. And that sounds like a great deal because, there's only maybe 50,000 bucks in the bank
Yeah.
and you got to pay guys salaries and keep the lights on.
Yeah.
And you don't know if that public funding is going to come through in the next 3 months, but you have to stick with it because the worst thing we could do at this stage is let a private entity come in and say, wow, this is all well and good that you're doing, but you're making profit selling the fertilizer. So we're going to put this other stuff on a shelf.
Yeah.
Because that has happened many times to lots of great businesses and great startups who had real solutions. It's been put away. We
Yeah.
are not going to let that happen.
I
Even if
think
it means we have to run completely into the ground to make that happen, we're not going to allow that
I really
because,
commend you for that, Sam, because I think it is a real concern, especially when you're going up against, things like the fossil fuel industry and, agrochemical companies.
yeah,
There is a real risk that, they would, and it has been, it has been done, there's documented evidence that it's done that, they would basically come in and take it over and then bury it because they basically then eradicate the risk of competition and
it happened to
like,
a friend of mine, a business he had. It
yeah,
literally, he had a micro production business. They came in, they bought a controlling share, forced him out of his own company that he had
yeah.
founded, and totally monetized everything he was working on and all of the good work he was doing with PFAS digestion and stuff thrown out. They just
Yeah.
put it on a shelf, never did anything with it.
Yeah, and unfortunately they own the rights to it and then it, it is completely lost. So it's, this I mean it is something that I think perhaps people don't realize as well. And I think I'm grateful to you for sharing that aspect of it as well because it is, it's hard to be everything, isn't it? Which is what you guys are having to be. Like, you're clearly like incredible scientists, chemists and biologists and like and you've got that ability to take what you're seeing or questioning and create something that is actually useful and usable in sort of real world terms. But then you're having to like go through this whole like, business and entrepreneur journey and like
There's this
funding and
ethical
yeah,
side to it and
yeah,
doing due diligence to make sure that we're not actually polluting the environment in the process of trying to it's so much. It is so much. But it is also I feel very, very lucky that I get to be the guy who's doing this, you know,
Yeah.
that Gabe and I get to be the guys doing this work. That is an enormous blessing, and it feels really, really. It's something you're just like, wow, okay, yes, these tactical problems suck, but strategically, isn't this cool? We're making great strides. So
Yeah.
I don't want to bemoan too much the struggles that we had. And in fact, I want to try and, if possible, encourage other people to try and do the same. It is possible. I am not a genius. Gabe, maybe he's a genius, but I'm not. I'm certainly not a super good businessman. But I've been able to survive and I've been able to get this dream to start to come true because we've had the stamina to stick with it. We've had the aggression and the hunger to go after opportunities, and we've had the heart to stand up and fight these issues, even when it seems rather grim or the odds don't seem very good.
Yeah.
And that all that is courage, and anyone can be courageous. And
Yeah.
many people are all the time about other things. Business is one of the easier things to be courageous about because, I mean, at the end of the day, the worst thing that's going to happen to me is I'll probably just be broke again. I've been broke before. So what?
You're young enough, bless you. You're young enough that you can bounce back. But I don't, well, I seriously hope that you're not going to go broke because I I think what you're doing is absolutely incredible, and I actually feel like really blessed to have got the opportunity to sit down and talk to you because just you're just an amazing person who really is inspiring to people. Like you saw a problem, in something that you cared about, and you took the time to go, what could be a solution? Like you didn't know at the start of this journey, you and Gabe had no idea that this was the route you were going to take, and worms were going to be or
I
worm
didn't think
poo,
that at
even
all.
better, it's worm poo, isn't it? was gonna be the solution. But you were prepared to ask that question, and I think that's an important thing because at the moment I think we have to all find the courage to ask some of these difficult questions knowing that we don't know the answer, and then have to take the steps and follow the path to hopefully be like you and find an answer, and then refine it and stick with it. And it does take courage, and I think one of the probably the things that was really beneficial for you was your partnership with Gabe and the fact
Yes.
that you were able to support each other, because I think a central theme in my podcast that often comes back is community, and actually having someone to lean on and encourage each other, that gives you that ability to carry on with these ideas, and not to sort of stumble when it's difficult and hard. And
Yes. It's
yes.
symbiosis. I mean, it's every organism has symbiosis somewhere with some other organism. No organism, for the most part, is an island. I'm an okay chemist. Gabe is a great chemist. He is able to come up with really creative ideas for how to measure things, how to run experiments. He's great at experimental design. He's fantastic at coming up with really creative solutions for problems. But Gabe does not enjoy writing. He does not enjoy doing grant writing. He does not enjoy talking to people, really.
Yeah.
He doesn't enjoy creating a story around the actual product and how to sell
Yeah.
it. And I like those things. Those are fun for me. So the two of us, we have this excellent symbiosis. And there are
Yeah.
two other guys in our group too. And I wish I had more time to talk about them more. But Colin, for example, he does all of our finance work. I'm terrible at taxes. Colin is great at it. He loves spreadsheets. I don't understand why, but
Yeah.
he's into it. And then we have our friend Italo, who is an engineer. He knows how to program. He knows how to code Arduinos to make them run all of our machinery. And so we all came together with our different skills to create
Yeah.
this. So it's not just, it's not like one genius standing this up on their own will. I mean, a lot of people, I think, like Elon Musk, often like to make that kind of,
Yeah.
they like to kind of play into that mythos. But none of these things are made by one person. They're always pieces made by other people. I don't do the social media. My friend Vic does the social media, you know. So we work together where
Yeah.
we have our strengths. And
Yeah.
being honest about what your strengths are and honest about what your weaknesses are is a strength unto itself. and finding people to cover for those things is super, super valuable.
Oh, I love that, Sam. It's a really powerful message. And I think it's encouraging to people as well because it's like, it doesn't matter what your field of expertise is. It doesn't matter what your skills are. Like you have something valuable to bring to the table, to bring to the conversation, to bring to the solution. And actually, to not dismiss yourself if you're feeling like, oh, I'm not a genius chemist, or like I couldn't have come up with this, and perhaps some of the conversation has gone a little bit over my head. But I think one of the things that most people can be is they can be like a cheerleader, and that's
Yes.
what I always encourage people to do because I think that's one of the biggest things that's underestimated in our society is actually, like amazing people like you need encouragement as well to keep going. And that's kind of, for most of us it's free. Like, with social media now, we can, you can go and drop a comment on someone's post, and quite often for small businesses that can really make their day as well.
It's huge. Whenever I get a comment, it's like really, I makes me happy because I'm really bad at communicating. You're great at communicating. You're great at reaching people. I am not good at that. Like I've had YouTube channels in the past. I never get like any views. It's just the nature of what people are naturally good at and
Yeah.
not naturally good at. But you're right, and everyone has something to bring to the table. And this is especially relevant because earthworms themselves were underappreciated for hundreds of years. I mean, when Charles Darwin was first telling everyone, "Hey, I think earthworms are actually really good for making topsoil," everybody laughed at him.
Yeah.
They all thought worms were just worthless little stupid organisms that were parasites.
Yeah.
But they're not. They are the key to making topsoil. They're the key to recycling food waste into fertilizer, and now we are finding they may be actually the key to destroying vast amounts of plastic waste. And it's such a humble organism.
Yeah.
They are so simple, but they are so valuable. And no one anticipated that. They were ignored and looked aside, and pushed aside. But now we're starting to realize, wait a minute, they do have something to bring to the table, something amazing. And I think people are the same way. A lot of
Yeah.
people are underappreciated because we look at them, we don't expect much. But in reality, maybe they're like the earthworm. They have some amazing abilities that no one knows about yet.
Yeah, so we've all got to channel our inner earthworms and,
Indeed. We got to go down the wormhole.
yeah, rise up and like realize, take our true place in the world of like keystone species. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you today, Sam. And yeah, I hope, well, I feel like I'd love to come back and have another conversation with you, maybe like, sort of 6 months to a year or something to see
Yeah.
like, because I feel like you guys are just almost at the start of your journey, and I'm very much hopeful that it's like, I mean, you clearly have like loads of ideas. You've got an amazing product out there already with your Wrigglebrew, which is your fantastic organic fertilizer, which has so much potential already. And but you guys clearly don't rest on your laurels either. You're like, one brilliant world changing idea wasn't enough. So you're like, we're going to try and tackle plastic pollution as well in a really innovative way. And I mean, I remember like some of those stories coming out about organisms that could consume plastic, and again it not really sort of gaining ground. It was sort of a bit of a flash in the pan. So to actually hear that you guys have run with that and are refining a process, and ultimately hopefully completely eradicating plastic, which is quite exciting as well. And then even better if you're able to build soil health, which, let's face it, is the foundation of life on Earth, isn't it? Like, pretty much. So yeah,
Yeah.
basically just, well, I just want to say thank you to you guys. I mean, all your whole team, the guys with the finance, the guys doing social media, everything. It does. As they say in Africa, it takes a village, and
It does.
it's been a real pleasure. And I just I wish you all like huge success. I hope that you can scale this, and you have clearly a capacity to really make a difference in the world. And I'm grateful to be here and witness you, and to have spoken to you, and see what's possible. So it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm going to have all the details for Sam and his company in the show notes, so people please go and find them, support them. I believe at the moment your products is it just available in the US at the moment?
Unfortunately, yeah, we're just in the US, but we'd like to be in the UK. So
Yeah.
anyone knows
Well,
how to help
give
us
you
with that.
time. I'm sure, like, as you find a way to like scale and I have no doubt that you're gonna spread so in the nicest possible way.
But thank you very much for having me on. It's been a pleasure. And yeah, let's get back together maybe in 6 months and
Yeah.
see where we've gone with the worms.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Thank you so much, Sam. Thank you so much for listening to the Nurtured by Nature podcast. I truly hope this conversation has brought some hope and inspiration into your life. I would love to have these messages ripple out across the world. So if you can, please share this episode with your friends, leave a review on your favourite podcast player, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. I would love to hear from you, so please feel free to connect with me on the links provided in the podcast description. But most importantly, thank you so much for being a part of this journey with me. But don't forget to simply get out there and enjoy the natural world.